At 7:30 on the 24th of May 2019, police officers attended a house on Gregg House Road in Shiregreen, Sheffield, South Yorkshire, England. The police had received reports of concern. The reports were sent by the neighbours, and the concern was for the safety of the children inside the house. In response to the reports, the police initiated a large-scale response to the incident. 15 police cars arrived at the scene. Once they arrived, they located 6 children, aged 7 months, 3-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 13-year-old, and 14-year-old. All 6 of the children were inside the property unconscious. Police officers then arrested 2 people, a 37-year-old man and a 34-year-old woman. The area surrounding that road was put into lockdown, including Hartley Brook Primary Academy. The playground of that school was used as a landing space for the Yorkshire Air Ambulance. In addition to the air ambulance, there was also 4 road ambulances present. All 6 of the children that were inside the property were taken to Sheffield Children's Hospital for treatment. The eldest 2, the 13-year-old boy and the 14-year-old boy, later died in hospital. The remaining 4 younger children did stay in hospital for a while, but they were conscious and they weren't in a life-threatening condition. Police later narrowed down the cordon to mainly just the street area and confirmed that there were no other suspects at large in the area and that the greater community weren't at risk. And obviously, as you can imagine, social media at the time was going crazy. There was that much of a lockdown in the area, there was that many police, the air ambulance, everyone were expecting there a mass shooting or something like that. It were going crazy with rumours and speculation. And obviously the air ambulance, is landing inside the school playground. So everyone's expecting the worst and thinking that it might be shooting inside the school. However, a press release from South Yorkshire Police later came out to say that it weren't a gun incident, no shots were fired, and it did not involve the school. This would be a good time for disclaimers, so if you're watching this, please be aware it is a true crime. It involves real people. So if you're commenting or sharing, and I really do want you to comment and share, just please bear in mind that these are real people, and be a little bit sensitive with what you say. Before we get into what actually happened, we need to move back quite a bit. The mother of the children is called Tristan Barrass. She was a single mother. She had a brother called Machin, and despite them growing up in different houses, in separate houses, neither of them had a good upbringing. Quite a terrible upbringing, to be fair. They were both part of child protection plans and children's social care at quite young ages. From just 9-year-old, Brandon would pass from children's home to children's home and residential units before moving into his own independent living home. Sarah's 4 years younger than Brandon, and she weren't having a good time with either. She was suffering with neglect, and by the time she was 14-year-old, she was also living in a children's home. At that time, Sarah was making historical accusations of sexual abuse, and the sexual abuse apparently came from a number of different individuals. And there is a bit of solid evidence for this because one of the people that she accused did later get convicted of rape in the year 2000. But in 1998, Sarah was aged 14 and Brandon was aged 18. Sarah's mom suspected there was something going on between them, something a bit dodgy, some sort of incestuous relationship. And a reason for thinking this was she'd found love letters passed between them. And she did report this to authorities. However, the authorities came and they talked to Sarah. She denied everything. They looked at the letters and they kind of went, there's nothing we can really do about this. She's denying it. It might just be innocent, so they dropped everything. And additionally to that, the records kept by the care home that Sarah was in did say there were a lot of rumours going about that Sarah and Brandon had some sort of relationship going off. But there were never any formal complaints or records, so that didn't go anywhere either. When Sarah was 19, she had her first son, who she named Blake. She outright declared from that point on that she weren't in a relationship with Blake's father, and he didn't want to be involved in raising the child in any way. 14 years later, at the time of the incident, Sarah then had 6 children. The eldest 4 of these 6 children had been diagnosed with various disabilities and special educational needs/disabilities. The eldest was diagnosed with ADHD. If you don't know what that means, it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. He also had speech and language difficulties and was known to the speech and language therapist service. The second child was diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder. In addition to receiving ADD support, he received art therapy in 2015 and solution-focused therapy 2018-2019. Like the first child, the second child also had serious allergies and speech and language difficulties. Sarah was seen as a devoted and caring mother of 6. She was fighting so desperately hard to get the support and the care that her family desperately needed. And she did need it. I mean, raising a family of 6, family of 7 including yourself, on your own can't be any easy task. Even more so when the eldest 4 have learning disabilities. And furthermore to that, it must have been really cramped, because all 7, the 6 children and Sarah, were living in a 3-bedroomed house. So obviously Sarah had her own bedroom, and then the other 6 were sharing 2 bedrooms. As we'll discuss in a minute, the family had a lot to do with social services, but the professionals' view of Sarah's parenting was overwhelmingly positive. She was seen as competent, caring, articulate. She supported her children and fought hard for the children's access to appropriate support and help. She frequently self-referred herself and the children to supportive services and the police. Now, as always, when I'm covering a case, I read absolutely tons of news articles. And I mean a lot of news articles. And I noticed with this one, a lot of the articles like to inform you that 6 months leading up to the incident, social workers visited the house 13 times. That's more than twice a month. But what the news articles don't go on to tell you is that it weren't necessarily always for the child's safety. I read the 27-page serious case review submitted by Sheffield Children's Safeguarding Partnership, and more often than not, the social worker went round to the house because of the child's behaviour or because the school had said something. There was only really one incident that came down to Sarah being an abusive parent, and I don't think that even resulted in a social worker visiting the house. That incident was basically the second eldest were in school and he was squeezing his genitals. And when a teacher asked about this, he said, well, I've seen my older brother doing it, so I'm doing it. And when the school phoned Sarah and told her, she said she was going to batter him. Now, if you don't know what battering means, it basically means beat you up. I'm going to give you a good battering. I'm going to give you a pasting. It's not always... sometimes you say, oh, I'm going to batter him. But you can say, oh, if you carry on, I'm going to batter you. You know what I mean? It's not always meant to be a violent thing. You know what I mean? It's very loose how it's used. And although the social services didn't visit for this, the school did check it up. They checked that there were no injuries on the child, and they asked the child if they were okay and stuff. And they said that she hadn't actually hit him. I do think later in a police interview, the police asked about this, and Sarah did say that she'd slapped him. But again, like I said, there were no marks. The child didn't really think anything of it. And that's pretty much all the violence that comes up. Other than that, there's not really any mentions of Sarah being a bad parent in this entire review. So now, skipping forward quite a bit to the time it happened, in May 2019, a strategy meeting had been put in place, and that basically means social services and what other authorities need to be involved all get together and strategise. They discuss ways that they can help the children or help the family. And obviously in this case it'll be the behaviours of the children is not the best, so we need to find a way to help them, and so on and so forth. And it was decided in that meeting that there would be a child protection investigation. And the meeting would move on to an initial child protection conference, which is basically the same type of thing. It's just a bit more serious. That is kind of a meeting where they can decide to take the children into care or something like that. And that day, a social worker went round to Sarah's house, met with Sarah, and explained the verdict of the meeting, basically. And apparently, while the social worker around at Sarah's house, she pressed on that they know that all the children have got the same dad, but they don't know who the dad is. Nobody knows who the dad is. So they really, really now need to be knowing. And this is something that they'd always pressed on a bit, but apparently in this meeting, after the strategy meeting, she was really pressing to find out who the dad were. At this point, Sarah's quite concerned that the children will be taken away. But this social worker reassured her that that weren't going to happen, that's not the case, and she went into a lot of detail of explaining the legal procedure, the legal process of what was going to happen and what decisions might be taken and things. But he said that Sarah didn't quite believe her. She was adamant that they were trying to take the children. The day after this meeting had taken place and the social worker had come round, The day after, this woman came up to Sarah and informed her that her child had told her that Sarah's second eldest had sexually assaulted them 3 weeks prior. The day after that is the day of the incident. Well, kind of, it's where the incident starts. And Sarah and her brother Brandon had rounded up all the tablets from around the house. Most of the tablets were for ADHD, because obviously we've got a few of them in the house, and they collected them all up and divided them into 4 piles. Each pile was for one of the eldest 4 children. Sarah and Brandon then told the children to take the tablets. And obviously kids aren't stupid, they've always been told to stay away from tablets, and they know what tablets are, so they're looking at this pile of tablets, they're looking back at Sarah and saying, no, we don't want to, that's not safe. And Sarah's response to this was, Mum knows best. Ultimately, the 4 eldest children were forced to take this pile of cocktail tablets with a fizzy drink, and then she sent them off to bed. To die. She tried to kill them via overdose. Apparently Sarah then went on to text friends and post on social media saying how the kids weren't very well and there must be a sickness bug in the house. And according to neighbours, one of their sons received a message on his Nintendo Switch from one of the kids saying, feeling sick. So obviously Sarah and Brandon have overdosed for kids and then sent them to bed to die. And that's exactly what they expect to happen. The kids to die, not wake up the next morning. And I suppose they're trying to get them to die peacefully in their sleep. But that's not what happens. The next morning, the now very poorly children wake up. So Sarah's quite panicked. This weren't supposed to happen. This weren't the plan. So she phones Brandon and says, you need to come back round. And obviously there's a bit of panic in the air. Because if the world gets out that they've given these kids these tablets, then 1, the kids aren't dead, but 2, the kids are now definitely going to get taken away from them. They've just tried to overdose them. Sarah then murdered 13-year-old Tristan. She strangled him using the cord from her dressing gown, and that took 3 minutes. He furiously struggled, obviously, and even managed to shout, stop. 14-year-old Blake, the eldest child, witnessed this, and he shouted, Mom's killing Tristan. At that point, Brandon, Sarah's brother, strangled Blake with his bare hands. Later in police interviews, he said, I just had that feeling that you just really want to strangle someone, you know? They then ran a bath and tried to drown the 3rd eldest child. However, it was at this time that the police turned up and raided the house. The newspapers speculate, I think the older newspapers are wrong and the newer ones are right. But there's a bit of speculation about that, but I'm fairly adamant and confident that that's what they were trying to do, and it was the neighbours that formed the police. The older papers claim that they didn't manage to and they get in, and it was them that formed police. And I've got no concern in my brain, I've got no doubt in my brain that that version of events was wrong. What actually happened is the police interrupted and stopped the murder of the 3rd child. Either which way, the police did get there in time and they did save the 4 youngest children, which were very quickly taken into hospital. Once at hospital, Tristan, the 13-year-old boy, second eldest, died at 9:14, 14 minutes past 9. The eldest, Blake, 14-year-old, he was pronounced dead 12 minutes later. The 4 remaining children were hospitalised, but they weren't in a life-threatening condition, they were conscious, and they did leave hospital not too long after, but they were held in for a bit. Sarah had written down funeral arrangements for the children inside a notepad. She'd even written on the wall for anyone that came into the house not to go upstairs but to raise the alarm. In court, it was constantly said that Sarah thought the children would have been better off dead than in care. In fact, that's pretty much the entire court case summarised. So there's now this entire image of Sarah being this single mom doing her very best, struggling with these 6 children, and the eldest 3 are misbehaving, 4 of them have got learning disabilities, and she loved them so dearly, and she was scared of losing them. And it ultimately paints a picture that all of this happened because the social services failed them. However, the way I see it, that's far from the truth. And to get to that verdict, and before you settle that that is how Sarah was and that is what happened, let's go back way further. Because all of this is a lie. Let's not remember that the core foundation of this story is that Sarah was struggling as a single parent. But she weren't a single parent. As you've probably gathered by now, Brandon, her brother, was the father of all 6 children. Sarah and Brandon had been having an incestuous relationship since their teens. And it was that much of a secret even the kids didn't know. One of the kids at one point told a social worker when she was asking about his dad, They said, my dad died in World War II, which obviously mathematically is very unlikely, but for a child being told that probably won't know much about World War II and properly grasp ages, it's just something you'd believe. Some notes were recovered from Sarah's phone, and they read, Brandon is the dad to all the kids. The pills didn't work, so he's had me kill Tristan and he's killed Blake. I'm sat here with the other three. He's going to kill them, then me. Okay. So we've now got the basis of the story. But I assume you're still sat there thinking, well, she was struggling, she weren't getting the support she needed, and she did keep asking for support. And like I said, we need to go way, way, way back, before they were even teenagers. So let's introduce Martin Barrass, Sarah's brother. Because Martin claims that Sarah and Brandon have been evil since birth. He said they're both as bad as each other. They're both evil, murdering psychopaths. He says that he witnessed Brandon's violence toward Blake years before. Tristan at this time was still in a pushchair. Blake was a toddler, maybe 3 or 4 year old. And they were out for a walk when Brandon grabbed Blake by the arm and really roughly dragged him across the floor. And you could say, well, why didn't Martin do anything about it? But Martin did. From that point on, he was that concerned that over the years he did call social services and report them quite a few times. But it weren't just the fact that they were a bit too violent towards the kids that makes him call them psychopaths. Oh no. And this isn't Brandon's voice, obviously, but this is what Brandon said.
They loved killing things and inflicting pain. We had mice, tiny little black and white things. One day I heard my sister, Donna, who has since died, screaming and crying. I walked in and Brandon and Sarah were laughing, chasing the mice, stamping on them, killing them. I tried to push them away but they were too strong. They were falling over laughing, while we were in floods of tears looking at the little bodies on the floor. Another time we were playing and Sarah shoved a girl out of a tree. She pushed her really hard and the girl screamed as she hit the floor, badly hurting her arm. Sarah just stood over her laughing. She thought it was really funny. I knew from when they killed the mice that they were evil.
It's claimed by some sources that Sarah and Brandon had planned to kill the kids up to 10 days before actually attempting it. And in general life, Sarah had quite often threatened the kids, saying things like, I gave you life, I can take it away. A few months before the incident happened, Sarah had posted an image on Facebook. It was a text image and it was a Stephen King quote that read, murder is like potato chips. You can't stop with just one. She also posted an image of the Grim Reaper, and along the bottom of the image it said, coming for you, ... And as most of you will probably know, when you post the image to Facebook, you can also put some text with it. And the text that Sarah chose to put with this was, I'm not mean or cold-hearted, I'm just sick of being fucked over. Then, the time closer to the incident, she searched on Google, or she searched on the internet, for strangulation, suffocation, and drowning. In police interviews with Brandon, he said that he'd wrapped the bin bags around their heads in order to make sure they were, and quote, doubly sure that they were dead. At court in May, Sarah screamed from the dock, I didn't kill my boys. Swear to God, I didn't do it, you'll see. However, at the next court hearing in September, she did plead guilty. On the 12th of November, Sarah cried for a 20-minute hearing. She was separated from Brandon, and Brandon was surrounded by 3 security guards. He was showing no emotion. The youngest 4 children have not been named due to the child protection laws in the UK. But they're now in the care of People Services of Sheffield City Council. 13-year-old Tristan and 14-year-old Blake were laid to rest together in one coffin in their funeral in August. The boys' names were on each side of the coffin, and their funeral procession was led by over 300 motorbikes and 2 Lamborghinis. The house that the family once lived in got demolished and is now a memorial garden. And that's the end of this case. First of all, I'd like to say I'm sorry if you prefer cold cases. I know I haven't done one of them for the last 2 weeks. I promise I'll make sure that next week's one of them. But there you go. What a twisted, messed up situation. And like I said, a lot of the papers push out that it was social services' fault. But I can't bring myself to believe that. From what we've heard from Martin, I think before I read that, they were doubting my brain that this was just because she was struggling. Because the newspapers said that it were a mix of not wanting to get found out of being incestuous and not wanting the kids to be taken away from her. And I kind of go, no, that's not all it were. They weren't right in the head. I don't think by any stretch of imagination that it was because they weren't getting enough support. Although that I think social services did address that they ought to have responded a little bit faster and got support faster and things. And the care service did, in this report, bring in a few things that they could have done better. But ultimately, I don't think they're to blame for the deaths of the children. And if they are for anything, they should have removed them earlier. But even still, looking on that basis, other than the children's behaviour, I don't think they had grounds to. I don't think they had grounds to think that the children were unsafe. All in all, this story is just messed up. And regardless of other reasons, this is a lot of children that have been severely mentally damaged because of this. I did read the third eldest child that they tried to drown were having a lot of therapy and a lot of work done, because they even got to a point where they were scared to have baths because of the trauma of trying to be drowned. And my heart goes out to them, and obviously prayers out to Tristan and Blake. What an absolute awful, awful situation. Thank you for watching. Videos are now posted every Sunday. I'm going to try and get back to doing 2, but it won't be for a couple of months. I'm trying to catch up. I'm trying to get work done. If you do want to keep up with the latest information of when videos are published and stuff, please do check out the Facebook page. The link is in the bio. Till next week, guys.